In recent years, San Francisco has played host to one of the most important climate-adaptive urbanism projects in the US. See, in the 1920s, San Francisco city planners decided it would be a good idea to utterly destroy sensitive sand dunes along the city's coastline in order to build a 3-mile-long scenic highway. In hindsight, this was a terrible idea, but regardless, the highway would remain in place for nearly a century to this very day. However, San Francisco's Upper Great Highway has undergone a ton of changes in just the past few years, transforming from a car-centric commuter route to the city's newest car-free green space. For the most part, the changes started in 2020, when, due to pandemic-reduced traffic volumes, the city decided to close the highway for cars on weekends and holidays, designating the space for pedestrians and cyclists only. In 2022, the city studied the viability of transforming the highway into a permanently car-free zone, citing the rising risk of environmental degradation caused by the highway's current form. In 2024, that idea was put to a vote and was approved. The Upper Great Highway's days as a car-centric corridor were numbered, but not without pushback from residents in the surrounding Sunset and Richmond neighborhoods. And finally, in 2025, the Upper Great Highway was permanently closed to car traffic from Lincoln Way to Sloat Boulevard. Great, but wait, what now? Sure, there might not be any more cars, but the harmful infrastructure still remains. San Francisco now has some serious questions to answer as it continues to undo the mess it made in the first place. Like, what about the commuters affected by the closure? What about the ongoing environmental and ecological damage? What about future improvements to the new Sunset Dunes Park? Surely the city doesn't plan on stopping now, but the question is what exactly it should do about this stretch of threatened coastline to ensure it can be both used by people, but also be protected from people. San Francisco would be wise to take a 3-step approach to fixing Sunset Dunes Park, in my opinion. Phase 1, redesign, Phase 2, removal, and Phase 3, reuse. I'll break this all down in a moment, but at its core, the Upper Great Highway must be completely redesigned in order to accommodate new, car-free modes of travel and recreation, implementing everything from new bike lanes to elevated boardwalks and so much more, in order to create a world-class climate-adaptive green space on par with other such spaces in San Francisco and beyond. After planning and redesign comes Phase 2, a step involving the tedious yet necessary uprooting of the asphalt atop the dunes. This phase will be where San Francisco reclaims and fortifies the natural dunescape after decades of neglect and misuse. Native species of flora and fauna will be added in hopes of bringing back the natural look and feel of the dunes, not just for aesthetics or even the ecosystem itself, but also to protect the surrounding infrastructure too. Finally, Sunset Dunes Park will enter its reuse phase. No longer resembling a highway built in the 1920s in any way, shape, or form, but now a new, modern, sustainable green space long-term. The transformation from Upper Great Highway to Sunset Dunes Park represents just one of many cases of cities repurposing car-centric infrastructure into more people-friendly spaces. Think of Seattle's transformation of Alaskan Way, or Boston's Big Dig. But why exactly is it important to do something like this? Well, because for so many years, our cities have done the exact opposite, removing third places to add even more space for cars. A seemingly never-ending practice that has been so detrimental to the health and well-being of city dwellers across America. But now, maybe the tides have begun to turn. Where there were once downtown parking lots, there is now dense mixed-use infill. Where there were abandoned streetcar barns, there are now public markets. Where there were gas stations, there are now coffee shops. And where there were highways, there are now green spaces. Sunset Dunes Park and projects like it prove that we can take back our cities. So let's talk about it, right here from Fourth Place, your place to learn about US geography, urbanism, transportation, and city planning. So, it all starts with Phase 1, a comprehensive redesign rooted in the reintroduction and stabilization of native dunes. This phase also fully redefines the park space and recreational capabilities of Sunset Dunes Park 2. Historical maps and aerial imagery from before the construction of the Upper Great Highway show a dynamic dune field along the coastline, shaped by prevailing westerly winds. In order to bring back the natural dune morphology, San Francisco should utilize contour grading, a process that involves reshaping the dunes and its surrounding green space along its natural contours. Contour grading is beneficial for a few reasons. First, it slows down the flow of runoff after heavy rains and helps prevent soil erosion, all while enhancing the stability of the dunes and promoting the growth of native vegetation. Outside of the environmental benefits, the restructuring of the dunes is important to protecting the city's underground wastewater infrastructure, specifically the Lake Merced Transport Tunnel, which runs right under the Great Highway. After it's said and done, Sunset Dunes will have become a functional buffer zone, protecting underground piping and inland neighborhoods from the destructive effects of coastal erosion and storm surges, while at the same time functioning as a public park. And this dual functionality must be formalized into city code, inside everything from planning language to zoning overlays. Doing so would enable Sunset Dunes to evolve with the shoreline and serve as a prototype for flexible urban edges. By reframing the park as multi-benefit climate infrastructure, San Francisco can more easily secure state and federal adaptation funding, including from California's Coastal Conservancy as well as FEMA's BRIC program. Other than the utilitarian uses, the redesign of Sunset Dunes must include a recreational overhaul. But this doesn't just mean build a bunch of pickleball courts and call it a day. The redesign must incorporate permeable, adaptive recreational infrastructure in a way that facilitates multimodal mobility without compromising the resilience of the dunes. So yes to bike lanes, but jungle gyms, basketball courts, pickleball and tennis courts, and anything else like that should not be included in the redesign. As it implements the new hike and bike lanes, rather than using traditional impervious surfaces like asphalt or concrete, the city should utilize things like stabilized decomposed granite and recycled permeable pavers to create pathways for walking, cycling, maintenance access, and stormwater. In areas of the park with higher ecological sensitivity, elevated boardwalks should span the active dunes, connecting the lower Great Highway to the coast. The city should construct these boardwalks using UV-resistant composite materials or hardwood that minimizes footings and allows for natural dune migration underneath. Phase 1 fundamentally shifts the corridor from a strictly transportation-oriented space to just about everything but a sort of hybrid ecological and recreational realm. And all of this planning should be done by a newly created interagency task force, including officials from the San Francisco Public Utilities Commission, SFMTA, Parks and Rec, the City Planning Department, and the Environment Department. Then, and only then, can the city begin Phase 2, removal. This phase will play out throughout the next decade or so, and entails San Francisco slowly and carefully peeling back the layers of asphalt here. By selectively removing sections of asphalt and replacing it with more permeable, dune-compatible materials, native vegetation will be able to reestablish itself. It'll take time for such a transformation, given how sensitive this stretch of coastline is, and also because of the tedious process of introducing construction crews to the area to perform the necessary urban surgery. It's also important to mention that the city has already decided to expand the area of car-free Sunset Dunes Park in the near future. Right now, the city has effectively removed car space as south as Sloat Boulevard, but there are plans to extend that designation further down the Upper Great Highway, pushing the boundary south past the San Francisco Zoo until where the highway meets Skyline Boulevard, otherwise known as California State Route 35. But in my opinion, even that's not going far enough. While I was walking around the section of Upper Great Highway north of Lincoln Way, where cars are still allowed, I was shocked at just how ugly and overly car-centric it was, not to mention ecologically destructive. And no, I don't think this entire coastline should be one big parking lot for beachgoers. Maybe that's a hot take, but this stretch should be considered for reclamation during the redesign and removal phases too. Lastly, the project will enter Phase 3, reuse. This last phase is a culmination of the prior two, but also introduces some new ideas of its own. It will also be a phase that evolves and adapts as coastal climate conditions continue to change. However, if both Phase 1 and Phase 2 are implemented correctly, Phase 3 is where the fun begins. With brand new bike and pedestrian paths built and a new sustainable, climate-adaptive green space implemented, most San Franciscans will be satisfied. But some others? Well, they've already spent years voicing their concerns about the project. Critics of the Sunset Dunes conversion have argued that the closure of the Upper Great Highway disproportionately impacted the Sunset District and Outer Richmond commuters, especially those who lack viable alternatives to driving. At the end of the day, people have to commute, unfortunately, and San Francisco just doesn't have the streetcar and cable car network it once did. So commuter concerns are at least somewhat legitimate, but the solution isn't to just abandon or protest the Upper Grade Highway's transformation, but rather to advocate for better transit access around it. See, vehicle volumes on the Lower Great Highway have doubled since the Upper Great Highway's closure, and thus commute times have also gone up too, by an average of 4 to 6 minutes. So obviously, San Francisco should prioritize building 1 or 2 new alternatives to driving, in the form of light rail expansion. The city could easily activate a hybrid streetcar light rail line in a few different meaningful ways. All of the plans that I'm about to lay out offer brand new rail connections to previously disconnected Muni lines and underserved neighborhoods. First, SFMTA should introduce a hybrid rail line similar to the J, K, L, M, and N Muni metro trains. I propose an O line, connecting with the pre-existing L line at 46th Avenue and Tarival Street. From this terminus, the O line will make its way north along 46th, meeting the pre-existing N line at Judah Street. The O line will then continue east along Judah and north up 41st Avenue through Golden Gate Park, either along a dedicated right-of-way or along Chain of Lake Drive, before emerging onto 43rd Avenue and continuing east down one of 3 corridors: Fulton Street, Balboa Street, or my preferred alignment, Geary Boulevard. This single train line alone would provide a crucial car-free connection between the Sunset and Richmond districts. And if you know anything about this area, these are 2 of the most historically underserved areas of the city when it comes to light rail. And not to mention, they're the 2 areas that have been impacted most by the removal of the Upper Great Highway. The O line could then continue south down Arguello Avenue or Stanyan Street to connect back with the N line, where the train would then continue downtown via the Market Street subway tunnel all the way to Market and Drum. The second, and maybe more ambitious, rail proposal would utilize the Sunset Boulevard corridor. A new P line would run along an elevated viaduct from its southern terminus at Daly City Station, making its way west down John Daly Boulevard and north up Lake Merced Boulevard before reaching Sunset Boulevard. At Sunset and Lake Merced, the P line would transition to an at-grade right-of-way and run all the way up to Golden Gate Park, connecting with the L train at Tarival and the N at Judah, just like the O line. It would then have to continue along a dedicated right-of-way through Golden Gate Park, where it would continue further east down one of those 3 streets I mentioned earlier for the O line. So that's my rough proposal: an O train or a P train. But let's be honest, the best approach is to just build them both, right? With this 3-phase approach, the commuters are satisfied, the environmentalists are satisfied, but most importantly, Mother Nature is satisfied, with a sustainable, culturally rich new 3rd place for everyone to enjoy. Everyone, that is, besides cars. Because this should have never happened in the first place. The San Francisco park system is one of my favorite things about the city, and I already made a video about the nearby Golden Gate Park last year, so go ahead and check that video out when you have a second too. And I will absolutely make a more in-depth video diving deep into the park system as a whole, so make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on that or any future uploads. Don't forget to leave a like if you enjoyed this video, and comment your ideas about what you think the city should do with Sunset Dunes Park going forward. And as always, I'll see you next week, right here, from 4th Place.